Welcome to the Hindustani Poetry Podcast. I am Samina Mishra. This podcast is a curation of poetry written by children in workshops that were part of the Hindustani research project. The poems explore the ideas of liberty, equality and fraternity guaranteed to all citizens by the Constitution of India. The children writing these poems are from grades 6 to 9 from 3 places. Shaheen Bagh in Delhi, that was a site of a citizens' protest against the Citizenship Amendment Act. Rural Firozpur in Punjab, that was active in the farmers' protests. And Kitab Mahal, a library catering to Dalit and Muslim children in Govandi, Mumbai. The children are a mixed group. Some study in English medium private schools, some in government schools. Some children wrote in Hindi, some in English. They bring their diverse contexts into the poems they write, giving us glimpses of their lived experiences. Listening to their poems can lead us to think about our own experiences of liberty, equality, and fraternity, and examine what citizenship means. The poems can perhaps open a window to the world we seek to live in. The poem in this episode is written by a young girl in a village in Firozpur, Punjab. She regularly attended the farmers' protests of 2020-2021, both outside Delhi and at the sites near her village. This poem was written as an exercise on equality, but the child poet's words reveal a much larger landscape. They take us beyond what is normally seen as a child's world. Is the child's world really smaller than the adult world? Or are we limiting it and ignoring the layers of meaning that lie in children's experiences?
Equality. Equality is when mama buys new clothes for all. Inequality is when my friend gets less halwa than her brother. Equality is when the teacher scolds or is nice to everyone together. Inequality is when the teacher takes one person's side in a fight between two children. Equality is when women in cities drive cars. Inequality is when women in villages are told to manage the house and children. Equality is when the ration rice is distributed in the country altogether. Inequality is when the police does not listen to poor people. Equality should be for all.
The child poet's words reflect the world she lives in, just like all poetry. And this world crisscrosses the khates and the khasbas that dot Firozpur, like they dot the landscape of much of rural India, places that are changing rapidly. And yet, many things remain unchanged. The poet talks of how she has seen her friend getting less halwa than her brother, how she has noticed women in villages being told what to do. In some ways, women's lives are still unchanged. Even so, she is able to notice and speak about these things. Does this perhaps point towards possibilities of change? The writer of this poem told me that some of her family members work as farm labor. Her family owns no land. But she still wanted to be in the farmers' protest. She felt it was important because food is grown not just by those who own land, but also by all those who actually work on it. This understanding of interconnectedness can sometimes be missing in many adult worldviews. So perhaps listening to children's voices is just as important as listening to adult voices. even on what are considered big issues. For example, women's place in the world, the distribution of resources, or the attitude of those in power. This may be a step towards bringing about change. Farah Farooqi is a professor in the Faculty of Education at Jamia Millia Islamia, Delhi. She has worked in schools with teachers and children and has tried to understand how education can enable us to become who we want to be. She read this poem and shared her response.
I love this poem. This young girl, she is talking about how discrimination is meted out to people in families and school and in cities and villages, how both contexts are different and can be different. She's also talking about nation, that at the level of nation, she is questioning police excesses, that when police does not respond to the pleas of the impoverished, that is inequality. In her own way, she is talking about structural social inequalities which are across spectrum, starting from family, school, village, and nation. And what she's actually doing in the poem is that she's trying to put her finger or name the injustice meted out to people in different contexts. And I feel that naming is the first step towards any change, whether it is at the level of family or it is at the level of nation. This is the first step towards any change.
Equality. Equality is when mama buys new clothes for all. Inequality is when my friend gets less halwa than her brother. Equality is when the teacher scolds or is nice to everyone together. Inequality is when the teacher takes one person's side in a fight between two children. Equality is when women in cities drive cars. Inequality is when women in villages are told to manage the house and children. Equality is when the ration rice is distributed in the country altogether. Inequality is when the police does not listen to poor people. Equality should be for all.
These poems are from Hum Hindustani, a project on children and citizenship for TESF India. The poems in this episode were read by
Rohan.
More details on the project can be found in the show notes. The Hum Hindustani Poetry Podcast is a production of the Magic Key Center for the Arts in Childhood and is written and hosted by me, Samina Mishra. The children reading the poems were mentored by Ananya Tripathi. Studio recordings were done at Quarter Note Studios by Amartya Ghosh. Music is by Shireen Ghosh, and the vocal track you hear is Ishan Chintamani. This podcast was produced by Vaka Media. Our thanks go out to all the children who participated in the Hum Hindustani workshops and wrote these poems. You can follow us on Instagram at the Magic Key Center or visit hum-hindustani.in to know more about the project. Support for this podcast comes from Rohini Nilikani Philanthropies.